The gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Wasco, California, and Rose Catherine didn't flinch as the bullet shattered the window above her head, sending shards of glass raining down onto her shoulders like deadly confetti. She stood perfectly still in the middle of the dirt road, her calico dress rippling in the hot August wind of 1873. Her green eyes fixed on the three men who had just ridden into town with murderous intentions written across their weathered faces. Her father lay dead in the general store behind her, his blood still warm on the floorboards, and she had no intention of running, not now, not ever. The tallest of the three men, a scarred brute with a twisted grin, urged his horse forward. "Pretty little thing, like you shouldn't be standing in the middle of the street. You might get hurt." Rose's hand moved with practiced grace beneath the folds of her skirt, fingers wrapping around the cold steel of the Colt revolver she kept strapped to her thigh. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 12, and in the 6 years since, she had become deadly accurate. The weight of the weapon against her leg had always been a comfort, a secret she kept hidden beneath layers of fabric and propriety. Today, that secret might be the only thing keeping her alive. "I suggest you boys ride on out of here before you do something you'll regret," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. The three men laughed, a harsh sound that scraped against her ears. The one in the middle, younger than the others with cold blue eyes, spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "That's so. And who's going to make us? Your daddy's already taken care of, girl. Shouldn't have stuck his nose where it didn't belong, trying to contact the marshal about our operation." Before Rose could respond, another horse thundered down the main street, kicking up clouds of dust that momentarily obscured her vision. When the air cleared, a tall cowboy sat astride a magnificent bay gelding, his dark hair falling just past his collar, his jaw set in a hard line. He wore a dusty brown hat, a worn leather vest over a blue shirt, and 2 gun belts crossed over his hips. His eyes, dark as coffee and just as intense, swept across the scene with the practiced assessment of a man who had seen his share of trouble. "That's far enough, gentlemen," the cowboy said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "The lady asked you to leave. I suggest you take her advice." The scarred man sneered. "This ain't your business, stranger. Best move along before you end up like her old man." The cowboy's expression didn't change, but Rose saw his hands shift almost imperceptibly, settling closer to his weapons. "Name's Austin Barrett. I'm making it my business. Now you can leave vertical or horizontal. Your choice." Rose's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched the standoff unfold. She didn't know this Austin Barrett, had never seen him in Wasco before, but something in his bearing told her he was a man who knew how to handle himself. Still, 3 against 1 were poor odds, even for someone who moved with such confident grace. The tension stretched taut as a wire, the seconds ticking by like hours. The youngest of the 3 gunmen reached for his weapon first, his hand moving in a blur toward his holster. Rose didn't think, didn't hesitate. She pulled the pistol from beneath her skirt in one fluid motion and fired, her bullet catching the man in the shoulder and spinning him backward off his horse. He hit the ground hard, crying out in pain and shock. Austin's guns cleared leather in the same instant, and 2 more shots rang out in quick succession. The scarred man clutched his chest and tumbled from his saddle, while the 3rd outlaw's weapon flew from his hand, his fingers shattered by Austin's precise aim. The surviving gunman wheeled his horse around and galloped out of town, leaving his dead and wounded companions behind. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. Rose stood frozen, her pistol still extended, smoke curling from the barrel. Her hand began to shake as the reality of what had just happened crashed over her. She had shot a man. She had actually pulled the trigger and watched him fall. Her father had been murdered less than an hour ago, and now she had taken a life in return, or at least tried to. Austin dismounted in a smooth motion and approached her slowly, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Easy now, miss. It's over. You did good." She turned to look at him fully for the first time, and something shifted in her chest. He was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and eyes that held both hardness and kindness in equal measure. A thin scar ran along his left cheekbone, giving him a dangerous edge that should have frightened her, but somehow didn't. He was older than her, she guessed around 25, with the weathered look of a man who had spent most of his life outdoors. "I killed him," she whispered, her voice cracking. Austin gently took the pistol from her trembling hand and looked down at the wounded man groaning in the dirt. "No, you shot him in the shoulder. He'll live, though he'll wish he hadn't once the marshal gets here." He holstered his own weapons and studied her with those penetrating dark eyes. "That was some mighty fine shooting, especially for a lady who looks like she'd rather be serving tea than gunning down outlaws." Rose felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. "My father taught me. He said a woman out here needed to know how to protect herself." Her eyes filled with tears. "He's dead. They killed him because he was going to report them to the authorities. They've been rustling cattle from the ranches around here for months." Austin's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your loss, miss. Catherine, Rose Catherine." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, angry at herself for crying in front of a stranger. "And thank you for your help, Mr. Barrett. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't arrived when you did." "Austin," he corrected. "And from where I was standing, you had things well in hand." He studied her with open curiosity. "That's quite a hiding place for a weapon. Practical, though. Caught them completely off guard." Despite everything, Rose felt a small smile tug at her lips. Women's clothing has to be good for something besides looking decorative. A matching smile crossed Austin's face, transforming his features from stern to something warmer, more approachable. "I'd say keeping a pistol beneath your skirt is about the best use of a dress I've ever heard of." He glanced around at the scattered bodies and the gathering crowd of townspeople who were finally emerging from their hiding places. "We should get the marshal. There's going to be questions." The next few hours passed in a blur of explanations and paperwork. Marshal Henderson arrived from his office at the edge of town, a portly man in his 50s with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He listened to their account of events, examined the bodies, and interviewed the wounded outlaw, who sang like a canary once threatened with hanging. The dead men were part of a larger gang operating out of the hills, rustling cattle and intimidating anyone who tried to stand against them. Rose's father, Thomas Catherine, had been a respected merchant who had gathered enough evidence to bring them to justice. His murder had been meant as a warning to others. By the time the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Rose felt hollowed out, emptied of everything except a bone-deep weariness. She stood outside the general store that had been her home for the past 18 years, unable to bring herself to go inside where her father's body had been taken. Austin approached, leading his horse by the reins. "You got somewhere to go. Family." Rose shook her head. "No family. My mother died when I was young. It was just me and my father." The reality of her situation was beginning to sink in. She was alone in a harsh frontier town with no relatives, no real protection, and a general store full of inventory she had no idea how to manage on her own. "That's a problem," Austin said bluntly. "Those men were part of a bigger operation. When their boss finds out what happened here, he might send more trouble your way." Then I'll handle it the same way I handled today, Rose said, lifting her chin defiantly even as fear coiled in her stomach. I'm not leaving. This was my father's store, his dream. I won't let them drive me away from it. Austin was quiet for a long moment, studying her in that intense way of his. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. I can't quite decide which. Maybe I'm both, Rose replied. He nodded slowly, as if coming to some internal decision. I was just passing through Wasco on my way to San Francisco. Got some business to attend to up there. But I reckon I could stay on for a while, make sure you're safe until this gang situation gets sorted out. Rose's eyes widened. You do that for a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. We've been in a gunfight together. That makes us partners of a sort. Austin's expression grew more serious. Besides, I don't much like the idea of leaving a lady alone to face down a gang of rustlers and killers. Wouldn't sit right with me. Something warm unfurled in Rose's chest, pushing back against the cold grief that had settled there. I can't pay you much. The store makes enough to keep things running, but there's no spare money for hiring protection. I'm not asking for money, Austin said. Just 3 meals a day and a place to lay my head at night. That work for you? Rose knew she should be more cautious, should think twice about letting a strange man stay on her property, but something about Austin Barrett made her feel safe in a way she couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the way he had ridden to her defense without hesitation, or the quiet strength she sensed beneath his rough exterior. Or maybe it was simply that she desperately needed an ally in a world that had suddenly become terrifying and uncertain. That works for me, she said. There's a room above the store. It's not much, but it's clean and has a bed. Austin extended his hand and Rose took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Then we have an agreement, Miss Catherine. Rose, she corrected. If you're going to be staying on, we might as well use first names. His smile was slow and genuine. Rose it is. That night, after the undertaker had taken her father's body and the store had been cleaned and locked up, Rose sat alone in the small parlor of her living quarters, staring at the walls without really seeing them. The grief came in waves, crashing over her when she least expected it, stealing her breath and bringing fresh tears to her eyes. Her father had been a good man, patient and kind, always ready with a story or a word of encouragement. He had raised her alone after her mother's passing, teaching her not just how to shoot, but how to read and write, how to keep ledgers and manage inventory, how to be strong in a world that often demanded strength from women while simultaneously condemning them for possessing it. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She wiped her eyes and called out, "Come in." Austin entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her and settled into the chair across from her, his long legs stretched out in front of him. Figured you could use this. It's been a hell of a day. Rose accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Thank you for this and for everything else. She took a sip, finding it strong and black, exactly what she needed. You didn't have to stay, you know. You don't owe me anything. I know, Austin said simply. But sometimes we do things not because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do. He was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. I lost my own father a few years back. Different circumstances, but I remember what it felt like. That hollow feeling like part of you has been carved out and nothing will ever fill it again. Rose felt tears prick at her eyes again. Does it get easier? Eventually, Austin said. The pain doesn't go away, but it becomes more bearable. You learn to carry it. And you honor their memory by living the kind of life they would have wanted for you. They sat in companionable silence for a while, drinking their coffee and listening to the sounds of the town settling down for the night. Rose found herself studying Austin when she thought he wasn't looking, noting the way his jaw clenched when he was thinking hard about something. The small scar on his knuckle that suggested a life of hard work and harder fights. The gentle way he handled his coffee cup, despite his obvious strength. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Go ahead." "Why were you in Wasco? You said you were heading to San Francisco, but this isn't exactly on the way." Austin's expression turned guarded, and for a moment Rose thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed and set down his coffee cup. "I was tracking a man, someone who did a great wrong to my family. I followed his trail to Wasco, but it went cold here. Figured I'd ask around tomorrow, see if anyone had seen him passing through." "What did he do?" Rose asked quietly. "He murdered my brother during a card game 2 years ago. Shot him in the back over a $20 pot." Austin's voice was flat, but Rose could hear the banked rage beneath it. "The law didn't care much about bringing him to justice, said it was just another saloon killing, so I've been hunting him myself." Rose's heart ached for him. "I'm sorry." "That's terrible." "Life in the West can be terrible," Austin said, "but it can also be beautiful and free in ways the East never was. You take the good with the bad and hope the good outweighs it in the end." He looked at her directly. "Your father must have been a good man to raise a daughter who stands in the street with a gun rather than running away." "He was the best man I knew," Rose said, her voice thick with emotion. "He taught me that being strong doesn't mean you can't be kind, and being kind doesn't mean you can't be strong. He said the world needs more people who are willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's dangerous." "Sounds like my kind of man," Austin said. "I wish I could have met him." "He would have liked you," Rose said, surprised to find she meant it. Her father had been an excellent judge of character, and she had inherited his instincts. Despite knowing Austin for less than a day, she felt certain he was someone her father would have respected. The next morning, Rose woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For one confused moment, she thought her father was downstairs making breakfast like he always did, but then reality crashed back in, and grief seized her heart. She dressed quickly in a simple gray dress, pinned up her dark hair, and made her way down to the kitchen attached to the back of the store. Austin stood at the stove, expertly flipping bacon in a cast iron skillet. He looked up when she entered and nodded a greeting. "Morning. Hope you don't mind me taking liberties with your kitchen. I figured you'd need a decent breakfast." Rose was touched by the gesture. "I don't mind at all. This is very kind of you." "I'm a fair hand in the kitchen when I need to be," Austin said. "Learn to cook on cattle drives. When you're out on the range for months at a time, you either learn or you starve." They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table, and Rose was grateful for Austin's presence. He didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless chatter, didn't offer empty platitudes about her father being in a better place. He simply existed alongside her grief, solid and steady, a reminder that she wasn't completely alone. After breakfast, Rose opened the general store for business. Word had spread quickly about the previous day's events, and a steady stream of townspeople came by to offer their condolences, and, Rose suspected, to get a look at the mysterious cowboy who had helped her gun down the outlaws. Austin handled the attention with quiet grace, neither encouraging it nor retreating from it. He stationed himself near the door, his presence both protective and unobtrusive. Mrs. Henderson, the marshal's wife, bustled in around mid-morning with a basket of food. She was a stout woman with kind eyes and an efficient manner. "Dear child," she said, embracing Rose warmly, "I am so sorry about your father. He was a wonderful man." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson," Rose said, accepting the basket. The older woman glanced at Austin and lowered her voice, though not so much that he couldn't hear. "Is it true you keep a pistol under your dress?" Rose felt heat creep into her cheeks. "Yes, madam. My father thought it wise. Mrs. Henderson nodded approvingly. Smart man. A woman needs to be able to protect herself out here. My own mother carried a Derringer in her reticule all her life. She patted Rose's hand. You let me know if you need anything, dear. And that goes for you too, Mr. Barrett. Anyone who stands up to those rustlers has a friend in the Henderson household. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Rose ran the store during the day, and Austin made himself useful, helping move heavy inventory, repairing a broken wagon wheel for a customer, fixing the loose step on the front porch. In the evenings, they shared meals and conversation, slowly learning about each other in the way people do when thrown together by circumstances. Rose discovered that Austin had grown up in Texas, the youngest of 3 brothers. His family had owned a small ranch, but hard times and his brother's death had driven him to sell his share and take to wandering. He was 26 years old, educated enough to read and write, but hardened by a life spent working cattle and surviving in harsh conditions. He had a dry sense of humor that caught Rose off guard, making her laugh when she least expected it. Austin learned that Rose had been born in Missouri, but had come to California as a child when her father decided to try his luck in the West. She had attended school until she was 14, then worked alongside her father in the store. She loved reading, particularly novels about adventure and romance, though she kept that admission quiet as if embarrassed by it. She was 18 years old, whip-smart, and far stronger than her delicate appearance suggested. A week after the shooting, Marshal Henderson stopped by with news. "We arrested 4 more members of that rustling gang," he announced. "They were hiding out in the hills north of town." "The one you shot, Rose, gave up their location in exchange for a lighter sentence. The whole operation is falling apart." "That's wonderful news," Rose said, relief flooding through her. "Does that mean it's safe now?" The marshal hesitated. "Safer, yes. But their leader, a man called Mad Jack Brennan, is still out there somewhere. He's a mean one, Rose. Killed a dozen men that we know of, maybe more. He won't take kindly to his operation being destroyed." Austin straightened from where he'd been leaning against the counter. "What do you know about this Brennan?" "He's originally from back east, came out here about 5 years ago. Built up his gang slowly, careful-like. Smart enough to avoid direct confrontation with the law, always keeping his own hands clean while his men did the dirty work." Marshal Henderson rubbed his jaw. "I'd feel better if Rose had someone looking out for her, at least until we know Brennan's been caught or driven out of the territory." "She does," Austin said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Rose's heart did a strange little flip at his words. Over the past week, she had grown accustomed to Austin's presence, had come to rely on the sense of security he provided. But more than that, she had begun to notice other things. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle tone he used when speaking to her, the careful way he respected her space while still managing to be close enough to help if needed. She found herself thinking about him at odd moments, wondering what it would be like if his stay was permanent rather than temporary, but she couldn't afford to think that way. Austin had his own life, his own quest for justice. He was helping her out of kindness, nothing more. It would be foolish to let herself develop deeper feelings for a man who would inevitably move on. Still, as the days turned into weeks, Rose found it increasingly difficult to maintain that emotional distance. Austin was unlike any man she had ever known. He treated her as an equal, respected her intelligence and her capability, but he also showed her small kindnesses that made her chest feel warm. He brought her wildflowers he found on his morning rides, claiming they were just sitting there, and it seemed a shame to waste them. He fixed the squeaky hinge on her bedroom door without being asked. He listened when she talked about her father, about her grief and her fears, and he never once told her she was being too emotional or too dramatic. One evening in early September, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of red and purple, Austin cleared his throat. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Rose said. "Why haven't you married?" "Pretty woman like you, I'd have thought you'd have suitors lining up." Rose felt her cheeks warm. There aren't many options in a small town like Wasco. Most of the available men are cowboys passing through or miners more interested in gold than romance. The few permanent residents my age are already spoken for, or... She trailed off, not wanting to admit that none of them had ever stirred anything in her heart. "Or what?" Austin prompted gently. "Or not the kind of men I could see myself spending a lifetime with," Rose finished. "My father never pushed me to marry. He said I should wait until I found someone I could respect and trust, someone who made me want to be a better version of myself." She glanced at Austin, then quickly looked away. "What about you? Have you ever been close to marrying?" Austin was quiet for a long moment. "Once. There was a girl back in Texas, Sarah. We were engaged, planning a future together. But after my brother died and I decided to go after his killer, she gave me an ultimatum. Stay and marry her or leave and lose her. I chose to leave. Do you regret it?" Rose asked softly. "Sometimes," Austin admitted. "But mostly I think it showed we weren't right for each other. If she had really loved me, she would have understood why I needed to do this. And if I had really loved her, I would have been able to let my brother's death go unavenged." He turned to look at Rose directly. "Love should make you stronger, not force you to be less than who you are." Rose's breath caught in her throat at the intensity in his gaze. "That's a lovely sentiment." "It's the truth," Austin said. "At least that's what I believe." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Rose couldn't quite name. She wanted to reach out, to close the small distance between them on the porch swing, but fear held her back. What if she had misread the situation? What if Austin saw her only as someone to protect, a duty to fulfill rather than a woman he might care for? Before she could gather her courage, a rider thundered up to the store, his horse lathered with sweat. The young man, barely more than a boy, leaped from the saddle. "Miss Catherine." "Mr. Barrett, the marshal needs you right away. There's been trouble at the Peterson ranch." Austin was on his feet instantly. "What kind of trouble?" "Rustlers hit them this afternoon. Killed 2 ranch hands and burned one of the barns." "Mr. Peterson says they left a message carved into his gate. It said this is for Mad Jack. Marshall thinks Brennan is sending a message to anyone who helped break up his gang." Rose's blood ran cold. She had been involved in stopping those rustlers. Did that make her a target? From the grim expression on Austin's face, he was thinking the same thing. "Stay here," Austin said. "Lock the doors and keep your pistol close. I'll ride out with the marshal and see what's what." "No," Rose said firmly. "If this involves me, I have a right to know what's happening." "I'm coming with you." Austin looked ready to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. He nodded curtly. "Fine, but you stay close to me and you do what I say if trouble starts." "Understood." "Understood," Rose agreed. They rode out to the Peterson ranch, a sprawling property about 5 miles outside of town. The smell of smoke still hung in the air, and the remains of the barn smoldered in the gathering darkness. Marshall Henderson stood with Tobias Peterson, a weathered rancher in his 50s, examining the message carved into the wooden gate. The words sent a chill down Rose's spine. "This is for Mad Jack. More blood will spill until those who betrayed him pay." "He's talking about everyone who helped catch his men," Marshall Henderson said grimly. "That includes you, Rose, and you too, Austin. Brennan knows who you are and he's making threats." Tobias Peterson spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "I lost 2 good men today." Young fellows, barely 20 years old. Brennan's men gunned them down without warning, without mercy. This has to stop, Marshal. I've sent for the federal marshals, Henderson said, but it could be weeks before they arrive. In the meantime, I'm asking everyone who's on Brennan's list to be extra careful. Travel in groups, stay armed, watch your backs. Austin's jaw was tight. He's trying to draw us out, make us scared enough to either run or make mistakes. Well, I'm not running, Rose declared. This is my home. I won't let some outlaw drive me away from it. The ride back to town was tense, with Austin constantly scanning the landscape for threats. Rose could feel the change in him, the way he had shifted from relaxed companion to dangerous protector. His hand never strayed far from his gun, and his eyes were hard as flint. When they returned to the store, Austin insisted on checking every room, every window, every possible entry point. He moved through the space with the efficiency of a man trained in such things, and Rose realized there was more to him than he had revealed. He wasn't just a cowboy seeking vengeance for his brother. He had skills that spoke of a more complicated past. Where did you learn to do all this? She asked as he secured the last window. Austin paused, then sighed. I spent some time as a deputy marshal down in Texas before my brother died. Learned a lot about how outlaws think, how they operate. It's part of why I've been able to track my brother's killer this far. Why didn't you mention that before? Rose asked, feeling a bit hurt that he had kept this from her. Because I'm not that man anymore, Austin said quietly. I gave up the badge when I started this hunt. The law said I couldn't pursue a personal vendetta while wearing their star, so I made my choice. I've been a drifter ever since, following leads, chasing ghosts. Rose moved closer to him, close enough to see the pain in his eyes. Do you regret that choice? Every day, Austin admitted. But I'd make it again in a heartbeat. My brother deserved justice, and if the law wouldn't give it to him, I would. Without thinking, Rose reached out and touched his arm. You're a good man, Austin Barrett. Your brother was lucky to have you. Austin's hand came up to cover hers, his palm warm and rough. And you're a remarkable woman, Rose Catherine. Your father raised someone truly special. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken feelings. Rose's heart hammered in her chest as Austin's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. She saw something shift in his expression, saw the way his gaze dropped to her lips, and she knew with sudden clarity that he was going to kiss her. Then a crash from the front of the store shattered the moment. They sprang apart, both reaching for weapons. Austin had his revolver drawn before Rose even processed what was happening. He motioned for her to stay behind him as he crept toward the store's main room. A cat yowled and streaked past them, knocking over a display of tin cups in its flight. Austin lowered his gun with a rueful shake of his head. False alarm. Seems a stray got in when we weren't looking. Rose let out a shaky laugh, the tension draining from her body. You nearly gave me a heart attack, you mangy creature. But the moment between them had passed. Austin holstered his weapon and rubbed the back of his neck. I should probably get some sleep. Tomorrow might be a long day, Rose nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Of course. Sleep well, Austin. You too, Rose. But sleep eluded Rose that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that almost kiss in her mind. Had she imagined the look in Austin's eyes? Had she misread the situation? Or had they genuinely been about to cross a line from which there was no return? And more importantly, what did she want? Her life was complicated enough without adding romantic entanglements. She was still grieving her father, still trying to figure out how to run the store alone, still under threat from a dangerous outlaw. Getting involved with Austin would only make things messier, but her heart didn't seem to care about logic. Her heart only knew that when Austin smiled at her, the world seemed brighter. When he stood close, she felt safer than she had in her entire life. When he spoke to her with that gentle tone, she wanted to tell him everything, to share every thought and feeling without reservation. She was falling in love with him, she realized with a start. Somewhere between the gunfight and the shared meals and the quiet conversations on the porch, she had tumbled headfirst into love. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, and she had no idea what to do about it. The next few days were tense for everyone in Wasco. 3 more ranches were hit by Brennan's gang, though no more lives were lost. The outlaws seemed content to steal cattle and cause property damage, but the threat of violence hung over the town like a dark cloud. People stopped traveling alone, businesses closed earlier, and suspicious glances were cast at every stranger who rode through. Austin threw himself into helping prepare defenses. He organized a group of townsmen into a watch rotation, taught several of them better shooting techniques, and worked with Marshal Henderson to set up warning systems. Rose watched him command respect and attention from men twice his age, saw the way they listened when he spoke, and understood that he had been born to lead. During this time, Rose saw less of Austin than she had before. He was always busy, always moving, always planning for the next possible attack. When they did have moments together, the easy companionship they had developed seemed strained, as if both of them were aware of unfinished business between them, but neither knew how to address it. 2 weeks after the Peterson Ranch attack, a young woman arrived in Wasco on the afternoon stage. She was beautiful in a delicate way, with golden hair and blue eyes, and she asked the driver to direct her to the general store. Rose was behind the counter when the woman entered, bringing with her a waft of expensive perfume. "Can I help you?" Rose asked politely. The woman's eyes swept over the store dismissively before settling on Rose. "I'm looking for Austin Barrett. I was told he might be here." Rose felt her stomach drop. "May I ask who's inquiring?" Sarah Mitchell. "I'm his fiancée." The word hit Rose like a physical blow. Fiancé. But Austin had said that engagement was over, that Sarah had given him an ultimatum and he had chosen to leave. What was she doing here? Before Rose could formulate a response, Austin came down the stairs from his room, drawn by the sound of voices. He froze when he saw Sarah, his expression shifting through surprise, confusion, and something Rose couldn't quite identify. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" His voice was carefully neutral. Sarah's face lit up with a brilliant smile. "I came to find you, darling. I've made a terrible mistake. I should never have given you that ultimatum. I should have supported your quest to find your brother's killer." She moved toward him, her hands outstretched. "I love you, Austin. I want to marry you. Please say you'll forgive me and come home." Rose felt as though the floor had dropped out from under her. She watched Austin's face, searching for some sign of what he was feeling, but his expression remained unreadable. He didn't immediately push Sarah away, didn't immediately declare that things between them were over. He just stood there, frozen, as the beautiful blonde woman pleaded with him. Unable to bear it any longer, Rose slipped past them and out the back door. She needed air, needed space, needed to get away from the scene unfolding in her store. She had been a fool, she realized. A complete fool to think that a man like Austin Barrett could fall for someone like her. He had a history, a past, a beautiful fiancée who had come all the way from Texas to win him back. Rose walked without really seeing where she was going, her vision blurred by tears she refused to let fall. She ended up at the small cemetery on the edge of town, standing in front of her father's grave. The wooden marker was simple, carved with his name and dates. It would be replaced with a proper stone eventually, but for now this rough cross was all she had. I miss you, Papa, she whispered. I miss you so much. You always knew what to do, what to say. I'm so lost without you. Rose. She turned to find Austin standing a few feet away, his hat in his hands. His expression was pained, and he approached slowly as if afraid she might bolt. I'm sorry, he said. I had no idea Sarah would come here. I thought that part of my life was over. Rose wrapped her arms around herself. Is it over, I mean? She hated how small her voice sounded, how vulnerable. Austin moved closer. Yes, it's been over for a long time, I think. Maybe it was never really right to begin with. He reached out tentatively, touching her shoulder. I told Sarah that I appreciate her coming all this way, but I can't go back. Too much has changed. I've changed. Hope flickered to life in Rose's chest, but she was afraid to trust it. She's beautiful, and she loves you. She traveled all this way to find you. She loves the man she thought I was, Austin said. Or maybe the man she wanted me to be, but that's not who I am, Rose. I'm just a cowboy who's trying to do right by the people who matter to him. His hand moved from her shoulder to her cheek, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. You matter to me, Rose, more than I can properly put into words. These past few weeks with you have been the happiest I've been in years. You make me want to stop wandering, to put down roots, to build something real and lasting. Rose's breath caught. Austin. I know the timing is terrible, he continued. You're still grieving your father, and there's a madman threatening the town. And maybe I'm not good enough for you, just a drifter with a dark past and an uncertain future. But I need you to know how I feel, Rose. I need you to know that when I look at you, I see everything I've been searching for without realizing I was looking. Tears spilled down Rose's cheeks, but they weren't tears of sorrow. I feel the same way, she whispered. I've been so afraid to admit it, so afraid you'd leave like everyone else leaves. But I love you, Austin. I think I've loved you since the moment you rode into town and stood beside me when no one else would. Austin's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. I love you too, Rose Catherine, and I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever, if you'll have me. Yes, Rose said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll have you. Austin pulled her into his arms, and finally, his lips met hers. The kiss was everything Rose had imagined and more, gentle yet passionate, full of promise and hope. She melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for the first time since her father's death, she felt truly whole. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. I should probably go back and make sure Sarah understands that I'm serious about this, about us. Rose nodded, though she was reluctant to let him go. I'll come with you. We should face this together. Hand in hand, they walked back to the store. Sarah was still there, sitting primly on a chair, her face a mask of composure, but Rose could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. So it's true then, Sarah said as they entered. You've taken up with this shop girl. The contempt in her voice made Rose's spine stiffen. Rose is not a shop girl, Austin said firmly. She's the woman I love, and you will speak of her with respect. Sarah stood, her hands clenched at her sides. I came all this way for you, Austin. I gave up everything, and this is how you repay me. You gave up nothing, Austin said, his voice gentler now. You came because you thought you could convince me to be someone I'm not. But I can't be that man, Sarah. I won't be. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but it's the truth. Sarah's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her face. I loved you. I know, Austin said. And I cared for you too, but we wanted different things, different lives. You deserve someone who can give you the future you're dreaming of. That someone just isn't me. After a long, painful moment, Sarah nodded. She gathered her things and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at Rose. Take care of him, she said quietly. He's a good man, even if he's too stubborn for his own good. I will, Rose promised. When Sarah was gone, Rose sagged against Austin, exhausted by the emotional upheaval. He held her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Are you all right?" "I think so," Rose said. "That was hard to watch. I almost felt sorry for her." "She'll be fine," Austin said. "Sarah is resilient. She'll go back to Texas, find someone more suitable, and live a good life." "She doesn't need me for that." Rose pulled back to look up at him. "What do we do now?" "Now," Austin's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Now I think I should properly court you, Miss Catherine. Take you on picnics, bring you flowers, ask your permission before I steal kisses. Do this the right way." Rose laughed, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. "I'd like that. Though you should know I'm not a very proper lady. I keep weapons under my skirts and shoot at outlaws." "Good," Austin said, pulling her close again. "I wouldn't have you any other way." The next 2 months passed in a blur of happiness, despite the ongoing threat of Mad Jack Brennan. Austin courted Rose with old-fashioned dedication, taking her on rides through the countryside, teaching her to rope cattle, sharing stories of his adventures. Rose opened up to him about her dreams and fears, her memories of her father, her hopes for the future. They grew closer with each passing day, learning each other's rhythms and quirks, building a foundation of friendship and trust beneath the passion. The store prospered under their joint management. Austin's presence brought a sense of security that encouraged more customers, and his willingness to help with physical labor meant Rose could focus on the bookkeeping and customer service aspects she was good at. They made a good team, complementing each other's strengths and supporting each other's weaknesses, but the shadow of Brennan still loomed. Despite the marshal's best efforts and the arrival of federal marshals, the outlaw remained elusive. He struck quickly and unpredictably, always staying one step ahead of the law. Several more ranches were hit, though Brennan seemed to be avoiding Wasco itself, as if waiting for the right moment to make his move. In late October, as the weather began to cool and the first hints of winter touched the air, Austin asked Rose to marry him. They were sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the evening chill, when he took her hand in his. "Rose Catherine, I know we haven't been together long by conventional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're my home, my heart, my future. Will you marry me?" Rose didn't hesitate. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." Austin pulled a simple gold band from his pocket, a ring that had belonged to his mother. He slipped it onto Rose's finger, and it fit perfectly, as if meant to be there. They sealed the engagement with a kiss that left them both breathless and eager for more, though Austin insisted on maintaining propriety until they were properly wed. They set the wedding date for December 1st, giving them time to make arrangements and allowing Rose to properly mourn her father before moving into this new chapter of her life. The town rallied around them, excited by the prospect of a wedding. Mrs. Henderson took charge of organizing the celebration, declaring that Wasco needed some joy after all the hardship of the past months. 2 weeks before the wedding, Rose was closing up the store one evening when a man walked in. He was tall and lean, with cold gray eyes and a cruel twist to his mouth. Something about him set off every alarm in Rose's body. "Can I help you?" she asked, her hand instinctively moving toward the pistol hidden beneath her skirt. The man smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "You must be Rose Catherine. I've heard a lot about you. About how you and your cowboy boyfriend broke up my operation." Rose's blood turned to ice. Mad Jack Brennan. In the flesh. Brennan moved deeper into the store, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "I've been waiting for the right moment to introduce myself. Thought I'd come by and congratulate you on your upcoming nuptials. I hear you're marrying Austin Barrett." "What do you want?" Rose demanded, her fingers wrapping around her pistol. I want to send a message. Brennan's expression hardened. You cost me a lot of money, girl. My operation is in ruins. My men are dead or in prison, and it's all because you couldn't keep your pretty little nose out of my business. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to burn this store to the ground, and if you or Barrett try to stop me, I'll kill you both. Consider it a wedding present. Rose pulled the pistol from beneath her skirt in one smooth motion, her hand steady despite her racing heart. I don't think so. You're going to walk out of here right now, and you're going to turn yourself in to the marshal. Otherwise, I will shoot you where you stand. Brennan laughed, a harsh sound that grated on Rose's nerves. You think you can outdraw me, little girl? I've killed more men than you've met in your short life. Maybe, Rose said, but I've got my gun already drawn and you don't. So I think I have the advantage. They stood locked in their standoff, neither moving. Rose could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air. She didn't want to kill this man, didn't want more blood on her hands, but she would if she had to. She had come too far, survived too much, to let Brennan destroy everything she had built. The door behind Brennan opened and Austin stepped through, his guns drawn. He must have seen Brennan enter and come around through the back. Drop your weapon, Brennan. You're surrounded. Brennan's eyes flickered between Rose and Austin, calculating. For a moment, Rose thought he might actually draw, might force them to shoot him. Then his shoulders slumped and he slowly raised his hands. Smart choice, Austin said. He moved forward and disarmed Brennan, then marched him out into the street where Marshal Henderson and his deputies were waiting. Apparently, Austin had alerted them before coming in. When Brennan was safely in custody, Austin returned to the store and pulled Rose into his arms. She was shaking now, the adrenaline draining from her system, leaving her weak and trembling. It's over, Austin murmured against her hair. He's caught. The federal marshals will take him away and he'll hang for his crimes. You're safe now, Rose. We're both safe. Rose clung to him, letting his strength anchor her. I was so scared. I thought he was going to kill me, kill us both. But he didn't, Austin said. Because you were brave and smart and quick. You kept your pistol beneath your skirt, just like you always do, and when you needed it, you were ready. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with pride and love. When I heard you were facing down Brennan alone, when I saw you standing there with your gun drawn, I thought my heart would stop. But I also knew you could handle yourself. You're the strongest person I know, Rose Catherine. I had good teachers, Rose said, thinking of her father and his lessons, of Austin and his steady support. And I had something worth fighting for. Austin kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Rose kissed him back with all the love and relief and hope in her heart. They had faced death together and survived. They had been tested by circumstances and proven themselves equal to the challenge. Now, finally, they could move forward into the future without shadows hanging over them. The wedding took place on a crisp December morning, with the entire town of Wasco in attendance. Rose wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her smaller frame, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Austin had ridden out to collect at dawn. Austin wore his best suit, cleaned and pressed for the occasion, and he looked so handsome that Rose's breath caught when she saw him waiting at the altar. Marshal Henderson, who was ordained as a minister, performed the ceremony in the town's small church. Rose's hand trembled as Austin slipped the wedding band onto her finger, but her voice was steady when she spoke her vows. I, Rose Catherine, take you, Austin Barrett, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to stand beside you in good times and bad, to support your dreams and share your burdens, to love you with all my heart for all the days of my life. Austin's voice was thick with emotion as he spoke his own vows. I, Austin Barrett, take you, Rose Catherine, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, to honor you, to make you laugh when you're sad and hold you when you're scared. I promise to build a life with you that's worthy of your strength and grace. I love you, Rose, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Austin's kiss was tender and sweet, full of promise for the years to come. The congregation erupted in applause, and Rose found herself laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by happiness. The reception was held in the town hall, with tables laden with food and a small band playing lively music. Rose danced with Austin, their bodies moving together in perfect harmony, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This man, this brave and gentle and complicated man, was her partner, her love, her home. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued, Austin pulled Rose aside. I have something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned before now. Rose's heart clenched with sudden fear. What is it? A few days ago, I got word about my brother's killer. He was caught in Nevada, tried and sentenced to hang. It's done, Rose. That chapter of my life is finally closed. Rose searched his face. How do you feel about that? Austin was quiet for a moment, considering. Relieved, I think, and grateful. For so long, revenge was all I had, all I cared about. It consumed me. But then I met you, and suddenly I had something more important to live for than vengeance. I let go of the hunt before I even knew the man had been caught. That's what loving you did for me, Rose. It gave me back my life. Tears filled Rose's eyes. I'm so glad. Your brother would be proud of the man you've become, Austin. I know I am. They held each other as the music played and their friends celebrated around them. Two souls who had found each other in the midst of chaos and violence, who had chosen love over fear, hope over despair. The Wild West could be a harsh and unforgiving place, but it could also be a land of second chances and new beginnings. Rose and Austin had claimed their second chance, and they intended to make the most of it. The years that followed were good ones. Rose and Austin ran the general store together, expanding the business and eventually opening a second location in a nearby town. They built a proper house on the outskirts of Wasco, with a big porch and a garden where Rose grew vegetables and flowers. Austin took on work as a part-time deputy, his law enforcement experience proving valuable to the growing community. Their first child, a daughter they named Grace after Austin's mother, was born in September of 1875. She had Rose's green eyes and Austin's dark hair, and she was the light of their lives. 2 years later, a son arrived, Thomas, named for Rose's father. He was sturdy and strong, with a laugh that could brighten any room. Rose often thought about that day in the street when Austin had ridden to her defense, when she had pulled her pistol from beneath her skirt and stood her ground against men who wanted to hurt her. It seemed like a lifetime ago now, though it had been less than 3 years. So much had changed, so much had been built from the ashes of that terrible day. She had kept the pistol, of course. It lived in a drawer beside her bed now, carefully maintained but rarely needed. Still, she took comfort in knowing it was there, a reminder that she could protect herself and her family if the need arose. Austin approved, had even taught her new shooting techniques to keep her skills sharp. A quiet woman with a pistol is a powerful thing, he liked to say with a grin. Good thing we have two. On a warm evening in June of 1878, Rose and Austin sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. Grace was chasing fireflies, her delighted laughter ringing through the air, while Thomas toddled after her on chubby legs. The setting sun painted everything in golden light, and Rose thought she had never seen anything so beautiful. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Marrying me, I mean. Taking on a wandering cowboy with a dark past." Rose smiled and nestled closer to him. "Not for a single moment. You gave me everything I ever wanted and things I didn't even know I needed. You gave me love, family, a future bright with possibility. How could I regret any of that? I'm the lucky one," Austin said. "I was just drifting, lost in my grief and anger when I rode into Wasco. I thought I was there to track a killer, but really I was there to find you. You saved me, Rose. You gave me a reason to stop running and start living." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two people who had found their way to each other through violence and loss, who had built something beautiful and lasting from the rubble of tragedy. Their children's laughter filled the air, and in the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon. The Wild West was slowly being tamed, turned from frontier to civilization, but some things remained constant: the land, the sky, and love that endured against all odds. Rose thought of her father sometimes, wondered if he could see her now, see the life she had built. She liked to think he would be proud, would approve of the strong, capable man she had married, would delight in his grandchildren. She carried his lessons with her always, his wisdom about kindness and strength, about standing up for what was right even when it was dangerous. And she thought about that moment in the street when everything changed, when a cowboy rode to her defense and she revealed the pistol hidden beneath her skirt. Austin had looked at her weapon and said with a grin, "Good, we'll need two." Those words had proven prophetic. Together they were stronger than either could be alone. Together they could face anything the world threw at them. As darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast California sky, Austin stood and offered his hand to Rose. "Come on, Mrs. Barrett, let's get these children to bed." Rose took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. They called to Grace and Thomas, gathering their sleepy children into their arms. Inside the house, lamplight glowed warm and welcoming. This was home, Rose thought, not just the building but the people within it. The family she and Austin had created, the love they shared, the life they had fought so hard to build and protect. She looked at Austin as he carried Thomas up the stairs, his strong arms cradling their son with infinite gentleness. This man who had ridden into her life on a day of violence and death had become her everything. He was her partner, her protector, her lover, her friend. He was the father of her children and the keeper of her heart. He was home. Later, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Rose and Austin lay in their bed with the window open, letting in the cool night air. Austin traced patterns on her shoulder, his touch gentle and familiar. "I love you," he said softly. "Every day I love you more." I didn't know it was possible to feel this much for another person. Rose turned to face him, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "I love you too. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Austin Barrett. You and our children, this life we're building together. This is everything I ever dreamed of and more." They made love slowly, tenderly, with the patience and familiarity of two people who knew each other's bodies as well as their own. Afterward, they lay entwined, Rose's head on Austin's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you think we'll have more children?" Rose asked sleepily. Austin chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. "If you want them, then yes. I'd be happy with a dozen little ones running around, all of them with your fire and determination." "A dozen might be excessive," Rose said, smiling. "But maybe one or two more. Grace needs someone closer to her age to play with, and Thomas could use a brother." "Then we'll work on that," Austin said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "But for now, rest. You've had a long day." Rose closed her eyes, secure in the circle of Austin's arms, and let herself drift toward sleep. She was safe, loved, cherished. She was home. And tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, new joys to share with the man she loved. The Wild West might be changing, becoming gentler and more civilized with each passing year, but their love would remain constant, a beacon of hope and strength for their children and grandchildren to follow. In the darkness, Rose's hand moved to touch the drawer where her pistol rested, a reminder of the woman she had been, the woman she still was beneath the wife and mother. She was strong, capable, fierce when she needed to be. And Austin loved her for all of it, never asking her to be less than she was, never trying to cage or diminish her spirit. "Good night, my love," Austin whispered. "Good night," Rose replied, and with a smile on her lips she surrendered to sleep. The months rolled into years, and the Barrett family continued to grow and thrive. In 1880, Rose gave birth to twin boys, James and Matthew, who brought chaos and laughter into the household in equal measure. Grace grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's intelligence and her father's courage. Thomas showed early signs of following in his father's footsteps, already learning to ride and rope by the time he was 5 years old. The store remained successful, becoming a cornerstone of the Wasco community. Austin's work as a deputy kept him busy, but allowed him to remain close to home, and he took pride in helping maintain law and order in the town he had come to love. Rose became known throughout the region not just as a successful businesswoman, but as an advocate for women's rights and education, using her influence to establish a proper school and library in Wasco. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin took Rose on a trip to San Francisco, the journey he had originally been planning when fate brought him to Wasco all those years ago. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate at expensive restaurants, and walked along the waterfront hand in hand like young lovers. Rose wore her best dress, and Austin bought her a beautiful jade necklace that matched her eyes. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had ridden past Wasco that day?" Rose asked as they watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. "If you had kept going to San Francisco without stopping," Austin pulled her close. "I think about it sometimes. I think about how empty my life would have been, how meaningless. I would have missed everything that matters, you, our children, our home. I would have spent my life chasing ghosts instead of building dreams." He tilted her face up to his. "Stopping in Wasco was the best decision I ever made, even though I didn't know it at the time. Fate," Rose murmured, "or providence, or just dumb luck." "Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it," Austin said. "I'm grateful for every moment that led me to you." They kissed as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, two souls still deeply in love after a decade of marriage, after children and hardship and joy. The Wild West of their youth was fading, replaced by rail lines and telegraph wires and growing cities, but their love remained as fierce and true as it had been on that dusty street in Wasco when a quiet bride revealed her pistol and a cowboy grinned, and said they would need two. When they returned home, their children rushed to greet them, full of stories about their adventures with Mrs. Henderson, who had watched them during their parents' absence. Rose gathered her babies close, breathing in their sweet scent, feeling her heart swell with love so intense it was almost painful. This was her legacy, she thought. Not just the store or the money or the respect she had earned in the community. This family, these beautiful children who carried the best of her and Austin forward into the future. They would grow up strong and capable, would know that their mother had once stood in a street with a pistol hidden beneath her skirt, that their father had ridden to her defense when no one else would. They would learn that love was worth fighting for, that family was worth protecting, that courage came in many forms. And someday, when Rose and Austin were old and gray, they would tell their grandchildren the story of how they met, how they fell in love in the midst of violence and chaos, how they built a life together that was rich with meaning and purpose. They would talk about the wild west of their youth, about gunfights and outlaws and the raw, untamed land that had tested them and shaped them. But most of all, they would talk about love, about how finding the right person could change everything, could make you braver and stronger and better than you ever thought you could be. About how two people, standing together with their weapons drawn and their hearts open, could face anything the world threw at them. Rose looked at Austin across the dinner table that evening, surrounded by their children's chatter and laughter, and smiled. He caught her eye and winked, and in that moment, she saw everything. The young cowboy who had ridden to her defense, the passionate lover who had taught her the depths of desire, the devoted father who played with their children for hours without complaint, the partner who stood beside her through every triumph and challenge. "I love you," she mouthed silently. "I love you too," he mouthed back. And in the warm glow of lamplight in a house filled with love and laughter, Rose Catherine Barrett knew she had everything she had ever wanted and more than she had ever dared to dream. The quiet bride with a pistol beneath her skirt had found her cowboy, and together they had built an empire not of land or gold but of love, family, and enduring happiness. The story of their love would be told for generations in Wasco, becoming part of the town's folklore. People would speak of Rose's bravery and Austin's loyalty, of the day they stood together against evil and won. But for Rose and Austin themselves, the story was simply their life, the beautiful, messy, wonderful reality of two people who had found each other against all odds and held on tight through everything that followed. As the years continued to pass, as their children grew and married and had children of their own, as Wasco transformed from a rough frontier town into a prosperous community, Rose and Austin remained constant. They worked side by side in the store until they were too old to manage it anymore, then passed it on to Grace and her husband. They watched with pride as Thomas became a marshal like his father before him, as James became a teacher, as Matthew took over a ranch outside of town. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1923, the entire town of Wasco threw a celebration in their honor. Rose was 70 years old now, her dark hair silver, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. Austin was 77, his shoulders still broad despite his age, his eyes still sharp and full of love when they rested on his wife. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, 3 generations of Barretts who had inherited Rose and Austin's strength, courage, and capacity for love. The mayor gave a speech about their contributions to the community, about how they had helped build Wasco from a rough frontier outpost into a thriving town. But the real celebration was in the faces of their family, in the legacy of love they had created. That evening, as the party wound down and family began to drift away, Rose and Austin sat together on the porch of the home they had built over 50 years ago. Rose's head rested on Austin's shoulder and his arm was around her waist, holding her close as they had held each other through countless sunsets. "You have any regrets?" Rose asked, her voice soft with age but still strong. Austin was quiet for a moment, considering. "Not a single one. Every moment, every choice, every challenge led me to you and to this life. I wouldn't change a thing." Rose smiled. "Neither would I. Even the hard parts, the painful parts, they were all worth it because they brought us here." "I kept my promise, you know," Austin said. "The one I made on our wedding day. I loved you until my last breath, and I'll love you beyond." "And I kept mine," Rose replied. "I stood beside you through good times and bad. I supported your dreams and shared your burdens, and I loved you with all my heart for all the days of my life." They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged in the darkening sky. Two people who had weathered storms and celebrated joys, who had raised a family and built a community, who had loved each other with unwavering devotion through 50 years of marriage. The Wild West they had known was long gone now, replaced by automobiles and electricity and modern conveniences. But their love remained timeless, as fresh and vital as it had been on that dusty street in 1873 when their eyes first met across drawn weapons. Rose thought about the pistol she had kept hidden beneath her skirt all those years ago, the weapon that had been both protection and symbol. It hung on the wall of their bedroom now, carefully preserved, a reminder of the woman she had been and the strength she had always carried within her. Austin's guns hung beside it, a matching pair that spoke of partnership and equality. "Good thing we had two," Rose murmured, echoing the words Austin had spoken so long ago. Austin chuckled softly. "The best thing we ever had was each other. The guns were just a bonus." As the moon rose over Wasco, California, casting silver light across the land they had helped tame and shape, Rose Catherine Barrett and Austin Barrett held each other close. Their story was complete, a tale of love and courage that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and built something that would endure long after they were gone. And when the end came for both of them, peacefully in their sleep within days of each other, the town mourned the loss of two of its founding members. But their family celebrated lives well lived, love that conquered all obstacles, and a legacy that would never fade. The quiet bride with her hidden pistol and the cowboy who had ridden to her defense had become legends, but more importantly, they had become the foundation upon which an entire family built their understanding of what love should be. Fierce, loyal, enduring, and worth fighting for with everything you had. Their graves were placed side by side in the Wasco cemetery, not far from where Rose's father was buried. The headstones were simple but elegant, carved with their names, dates, and a single line that captured the essence of their remarkable story. Together in life, together in love, together for eternity. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew across the California plains, people swore they could still hear the echo of laughter, the sound of two souls who had found their perfect match in each other and had held on tight through every storm and every joy. The story of Rose and Austin Barrett became more than history. It became a testament to the power of love, the importance of courage, and the beauty of two people standing together against the world with their weapons drawn and their hearts wide open, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together they could handle anything. Their great-great-grandchildren would tell the story to their own children someday, keeping alive the memory of the remarkable couple who had helped build Wasco and had shown everyone what true love looked like. The details would vary with each telling, embellished or simplified depending on the storyteller, but the core would remain the same. A quiet bride with a pistol beneath her skirt, a cowboy who grinned and said they would need two, and a love story that proved that even in the wildest of places, in the harshest of times, two people could find each other and build something beautiful that would last forever.